Okay, welcome back to your biology Keystone review videos. The first one we're starting with after the introductory video is the Unit 1 Keystone review. This aligns with the Chapter 1 in the textbook, Study Island Modules 1 and 2, and in your reading packet, I'm moving the camera around and I'm not great at this, in the reading packet it would be pages 1 through 12. I'm going to stop moving the camera around because I'm kind of not good at it. Okay, so reading packet handout, pages 1 through 12. So let's start there. You should be starting your biology Keystone review by going through the reading. Chapter 1 is the nature of science and scientific inquiry. So first thing to think about in terms of the nature of science is, what is science? As you're reading through these are pretty simplified handouts. They're not really complicated, but it does cover a lot of the essential vocabulary that we talked about during the course of the school year. For some of you, these are things that we haven't even discussed since August. So it's very important, especially with these first few units, that you're paying attention to some of the vocabulary terms that you haven't used in a while. So science is the method of generating knowledge through consensus. Consensus means that it's something that people can agree upon, or experts have the opportunity to review information. So science doesn't really have anything to do with someone's opinion, and that's a major issue. Science is something that generates knowledge through consensus. So the scientific method addresses questions about material in the world in a way that other people can understand, follow, and repeat. Some questions cannot be answered by scientific research because they're not testable. Some involve intrinsic value, ethics, or morality. Those types of questions can't be measured by science. So one of the things that we talked about earlier, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing and read it for you, but make sure you review the difference between a hypothesis, a theory, and a law. Some would say that we don't actually say fact in science because at any point something in the natural world can disprove previously accepted knowledge. So some true scientists wouldn't even ever use the word fact because at any point new information can change what we thought we knew. The big thing to consider about science is that it asks questions. All right, so make sure you're reading this stuff just to get a generalized understanding of the nature of science. The next few pages talk about the foundations of scientific knowledge and scientific thinking. It has to be consistent with experimental and observational evidence. It has to be logical and respected by the rules of evidence. Scientific knowledge has to be open to criticism. So you have to be able to be willing to have other experts review your work. And it has to be clearly reported so that opportunities for further investigation are enhanced. Some important things: ethical codes, what type of scientific investigation. We're on page 5 of your handout. Some investigations involve collecting specimens, seeking new information, performing investigations, performing controlled experiments, and making models. Okay, make sure you read through these pages. This is really important. This section, starting on page 8, starts talking about the scientific method. Scientific method starts with a question. Okay, when did life first evolve on Earth? Why do mitochondria resemble bacteria? How do sea tortoises navigate? These are all questions. The question leads to a hypothesis. The hypothesis leads to having your hypothesis tested. The hypothesis is tested through a controlled experiment. The controlled experiment leads to data collection. The data has to be interpreted, and you have to communicate your results with other scientists. What's the difference between an observation and an inference? This is important vocabulary for you to remember. And how are further investigations in science conducted? When you've done an investigation and it leads to a new question, how is that information gathered. So pages 1 through 12 are going to get you through most of the information that you need for Unit 1, Nature of Science and Scientific Inquiry. Because this is biology, we also talk about the characteristics of living things in Unit 1. I'm going to try to zoom in. Yeah, that'll work. All right. So in the first worksheet page of your packet, it says describe and or explain characteristics that are common to all organisms. Number 1 we have on there is DNA, the universal genetic code. All living things have DNA. This is called the universal genetic code because everything in the universe has DNA. I think I can zoom back out. The second thing, and I'm using the mnemonic device DocGerm, DocGermm, DocGerm. This was a mnemonic device that Mr. Rapparoo actually showed me. It goes into a lot more depth than most lists that have the characteristics of living things, but it really doesn't leave anything out. So if you can remember at least some of the DocGerms, then you're going to be really good to go if there's a question on the Keystone exam that involves you describing characteristics of living things. So DNA is one, universal genetic code. Organization is another. All living things are systems of related parts. We talk about that a lot. We talk about the different levels of organization. And I have another paper to show this. But the levels of organization go from atom to cells to tissues to organ systems to organism to population, community, ecosystem, biome, and biosphere. I'm going to try to zoom out on this so that way if you want to pause it here, that might be too small to read at this point. Atom, cells, tissues, organs, organ system, organism, population, community, ecosystem, biome, biosphere. Those are the levels of organization related to biology. All living things are made up of cells. Cells are the smallest basic unit of structure and function in living things. All living things grow and develop over time. The next one is evolve. All populations change over time. The next one is energy. All living things need energy. Number 7 is response. All living things respond to their surroundings. Number 8 is respire, for respiration or gas exchange. This is involved in cellular respiration. Number 9 is reproduce. All living things reproduce. 10 is movement. 11 is metabolism. And metabolism is a way of saying the chemical reactions that provide energy and synthesize new materials. And the word synthesize, remember, means to make. And number 12 is all living things maintain homeostasis, or a constant internal environment. And examples include temperature and pH. So I think it's interesting to look over this list at the end of the semester, the way we did at the beginning of the course, because at the beginning of the course you didn't know what a lot of these words meant, but now that we've been through everything, you can kind of see how living things demonstrate all of these different characteristics. All right, so the next page in your biology Keystone review packet has this table on it. Get this out of the way. Okay, list and provide a general description of all of the kingdoms of living things. This is important because you need to know some of the similarities and differences that living things share. So you've got your two types of prokaryotes. These are your archaea bacteria and your eubacteria. The archaea bacteria are the extremophiles, or the extreme bacteria that live in places where you wouldn't necessarily think anything can survive, like a volcano or a hot spring or something like that. Your eubacteria are just your regular bacteria that are found on virtually every surface. Prokaryotic cell general picture there. It's composed of cytoplasm, a cell membrane, a capsid containing its genetic information. It does not have a nucleus. Examples of different types of bacteria are spheres, rods, and spirals. Those are the three general shapes of your bacteria. Next, you have your kingdom Protista. These are eukaryotic organisms. They can be heterotrophic or photosynthetic. They can be unicellular, colonial, or multicellular. And this is kind of a catch-all kingdom. It's kind of a kingdom for organisms that don't necessarily have another place to go. These are things like amoebas, algae, and diatoms. Next, we have our fungus, decomposers. These are eukaryotic heterotrophs, meaning they have eukaryotic cells. They have to get their food from other places. They have cell walls made of chitin. They can be multicellular or unicellular. The unicellular fungi are your yeasts. Multicellular fungi are mushrooms. Your plant kingdom is made up of eukaryotic autotrophs. So eukaryotic cells, they have a nucleus. Autotrophs, meaning they get their energy from, they make their own food. They don't have to go eat elsewhere. So we know that plants make their energy from the sun because they're photosynthetic. Plants have a cell wall, and examples are plants. Animals are eukaryotic heterotrophs with no cell wall. All animals are multicellular, and some pretty basic examples of animals. So those are the generalized differences between the 6 kingdoms. Some groups say we have 5 kingdoms and they have the bacteria kind of grouped together, but other people feel like the Archaebacteria and the Eubacteria are so different that they should be in their own category. So again, if you need to pause this to write this stuff down, if you need to ask questions, please feel free to call me over and ask me to explain something for you. But that is your basic description of the 6 kingdoms of living things. The next question is create a Venn diagram describing the differences between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Now, I did this before in another study guide video, so I'm going to move over to the binder where I have already written out for you, and there's a lot of glare there. Let me get this out of the sheet protector. The differences between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. So, a prokaryote, zoom out maybe? Zoom out. Okay, prokaryotic cells, I'll start over here, zoom out, okay. Prokaryotic cells are here on the left-hand side. They are smaller, they have no nucleus, no organelles, circular DNA. They are only unicellular and they're only found in bacteria, so your Archaebacteria and your Eubacteria. Eukaryotic cells are larger than prokaryotes. They have a nucleus. They have membrane-bound organelles. They have linear DNA, and they can be unicellular and multicellular. These include the other 4 kingdoms, your animals, plants, fungi, and protists. Remember that all cells contain a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and genetic information. Cell membrane is sometimes called a plasma membrane. Cytoplasm is the jelly-like filling or the water inside of the water balloon. And genetic information, of course, is DNA. Okay. Next page of your Keystone overview was page 4. And that is 2 questions that are provided to us from Pennsylvania Department of Education. So it can give us some sample questions and let us know what types of things you're going to expect to see on the Keystone exam. I'd like you to try to work through this before I give you the answer. So you might want to pause it and just try to figure it out on your own. All right, so as I read through the question, I'm going to be writing some stuff down on my scrap paper. And if I was taking this test, I would say most prokaryotes and eukaryotes maintain a reserve of ATP. I wrote out that ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, which we know is energy for cells. Which feature of prokaryotes and eukaryotes makes the ATP reserve necessary? So what is it about prokaryotes and eukaryotes that makes us need ATP? This is asking about all living things because it's asking about prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So let's go through our choices. All living things. Just writing a little note to myself. Letter A, all living things have a cell membrane. This is true. All living things change over time. This is true. All living things use energy to function. This is true. All living things have the ability to reproduce. This is true. Why are all these statements true? Let's go back to the question. What reserve ATP? Oh, it's asking about ATP. I know that ATP involves energy. Let's go back and see if there's an answer that involves energy. Cell membrane, change over time. Energy. We know that all living things need energy. So I'm going to choose C as the best answer. If I look down here at the information, I can see that this is a level 2 out of 4 question. So 1 is the easiest and 4 is the hardest. I can see that 69% of people who took this exam last year got the answer correct. And if I look down here at the description for letter C, it says the key is ATP is the energy currency of a cell, and both prokaryotes and eukaryotes depend on ATP to fuel their cellular functions. That's basically what we set up here. I don't think I need to explain that anymore. The next one. Which structure, zoom in a little bit more. Which structure and function are common to all plants and some protists and distinguish them from animals? All right, I need to deconstruct this question. Which structure and function are the same to plants and some protists, and what makes them different from animals? So plants and some protists are going to have the thing that I'm looking for. Animals are not going to have the thing that I'm looking for. Let's go through the choices. Chloroplasts that conduct photosynthesis. All right, I know that animals don't conduct photosynthesis, so I'm thinking that this could be a good answer. My lights just went out. Mitochondria that conducts photosynthesis. That's not a thing. That's not what the mitochondria does. Chloroplast that conducts cellular respiration. Chloroplasts do not do cellular respiration things, so that's definitely not the right answer. Mitochondria that conduct cellular respiration. Mitochondria do conduct cellular respiration, but they're not exclusive. They're not exclusively found in plants and protists. They're also found in animals. So it's asking us what makes plants and protists different from animals, and I'm going to have to choose A, chloroplasts. Chloroplasts conduct photosynthesis. And if we look down at our explanation here, we can see that this was a level 2 question, so 2 out of 4. 60% of people who took this test last year got the question correct. And the key is chloroplasts, which are absent in all animal cells, convert light energy into chemical energy within all plants and some protists. So we were right. Letter D was wrong because mitochondria perform cellular functions. Cellular respiration, they are shared characteristic among plants, protists, and animals. So it's not the thing that distinguishes or makes them different from animals. So letter A was the most correct answer. All right. That concludes your section 1 biology Keystone review. The next video is going to be on section 2.